Being out in the desert, it's not uncommon to see strange things. Lights in the sky, weird sounds, even beings. And I have an account that is absolutely terrifying to the core. In fact, I'm sure you may not even believe me, but all my friends who were at this bonfire can testify that what we experienced was something of the evil supernatural realm. So let's clear out some details first. We're all about 1819, and since the pandemic, we've been driven crazy. So on this night, we were looking to go out into the desert and just have some fun, away from being locked in, and our parents, of course. It was a group of about 7 of us. Me, my girlfriend, a buddy of mine, his girlfriend, a couple mutual friends, and one of their family members. And so we drive out to this small area that's not too far from home, build a pretty good bonfire, and, of course, like any 18-year-olds do, bring some booze and some snacks, and get ready to have just a fun night of just letting loose, because we were all getting pretty tired of being stuck inside, for one. This was actually, too, about a year ago. Maybe last June, or maybe last May. It was still right when the pandemic was in the thick of everything. So we got the bonfire going, we're having a good time, cutting up, laughing, and talking. I think none of us had had dinner yet, so we were eating some snacks and just talking. We did have beer set aside, but nobody at this point had even drunk yet. And, for whatever reason unknown, my friend's family member, we'll call him Craig, starts talking about skinwalkers, which really creeped all the rest of us out. Because the conversation was, I think, about some funny memories or something, and he just starts talking and going on about skinwalkers, something some of us had never even heard about. And then my buddy is like, you shouldn't talk about them, you're going to draw the energy of them here. And even more so being nighttime, all alone in the desert night. They start bickering and arguing back and forth, and then my girlfriend and his girlfriend start to get really creeped out, while the rest of us are trying to tone it down. I mean, the argument or discussion got pretty heated. It ended up with them calling each other a few names and voices rising for sure. But maybe after 5 or so minutes, we're able to calm both of them down and successfully change the topic of conversation. But it doesn't seem like that lasted long, because Craig just shut up altogether and just sat there. Just as I start to feel the good vibes coming back, of everybody smiling and laughing again, we all 7 of us, hear this sound of what appears to be large, multiple animals coming towards us, but staying and circling around the fire, like they were just outside the light of the fire, by, I don't know, a couple car lengths, however many feet that is. And this was maybe 20-some odd minutes after the initial conversation of skinwalkers was started. And we all hear it. And so we all turn around, looking for the source of this noise, and whatever animal or animals are making them. It kind of reminded me personally of a couple of loose cows, except extremely aggressive with the way their footsteps were. But they did not sound bipedal. It was definitely 4 legs, and there was at least 5 or 6 of them, just kept circling us around the fire. We try not to think much of it, like maybe it was just some loose cattle, or maybe horses. There's got to be a reason for it, right? But as time went on, and by time I mean 5-10 minutes, we're trying our best to ignore this, but the noises, all the strange sounds are just getting more and more apparent. Like the hoof sounds, or so it sounded like, the snorting, the hissing, even growling. And not long after, we are all freaking out. So, one of our buddies decided he was going to walk the quarter-mile or so back to the car to grab an adequate flashlight and expose these, what he thought were loose steer for what they were. So he starts jogging back the direction of the cars, and not even 2 minutes later, comes sprinting back towards the fire, and we see him running from a distance, and so we're calling out to him, asking, What's wrong? What happened? And he runs right up to the fire, and he is pale as a ghost. I had never seen Devin this way. I'll call him Devin for the sake of the story. He was as pale as a sheet, and he looks at us all in the eyes, and his eyes are about as big as a plate, and he keeps saying that he was chased. And we're like, what? What do you mean chased? He said that he got a good look at those things, because one or two of them broke off from the other few and followed him as he walked towards the car in the night. He said that he kind of saw what it was. He described it as being half man, half reptile, but that it was skeletal looking. And he was all choked up and scared and shaking as he's telling us this. Now, the entire night, multiple of these things continued to circle around us. Maybe, I don't know, if I had to guess, 30 feet beyond the light of the fire. But they would never get closer than that. Even as the fire died down, we'd already planned on being out here most of the night anyway, until the early wee morning hours, so we had plenty of wood. That wasn't the problem. We were just terrified to leave the light of the fire, and the entire night was incredibly fearful, unexpected, and unsure of what was going to happen to us. I think at some point we all decided that we're just going to have to stay within the light of the bonfire until light. We don't have a choice. And I've never in my life felt like I was living in a real Hollywood horror movie until this night. And at some point, a huge argument, which turned into a fist fight with Craig and a couple of my buddies, ensued, because the buddy, not the one that saw this thing and walked to the car, but the other one, flipped out on Craig saying, "You caused this, you brought these things here to us because you mentioned skinwalkers." And the fist fight ensued. They're fighting, rolling back and forth. We had to break that up, and it seemed like whatever these things were really drawn to the violence. Like it excited them, I guess if you want to call it that. It was very strange. But we were basically forced to stay up all night and keep the fire going until there was just enough light. And as the dawn came, and just enough light peeked over the horizon to expose somewhat beyond the light of the fire, we didn't see anything. So maybe whatever it was knew that the sun was coming up and retreated. Either that or they were very well camouflaged. So we put out the bonfire as soon as we had enough light to run back to the car, and we all bolted. And it's not like we were anywhere special. We'd all just pulled randomly off the side of a road at a spot we all thought would work. And if you had the car, you could look out and see clearly right where a bonfire was. Like I said, you're out here in the desert. It's flat. There ain't nothing to hide behind. And that was the last time we've done a bonfire. I still talk to my friends, but we've not done anything like that since, at least at night. And as a matter of fact, I just tried mentioning this probably about a week ago, because the story popped up in my head, and I felt like talking to one of my buddies, and wanted assurance that that actually happened. He flat out refused to acknowledge that it even happened. I've not spent any time questioning any of my other friends who were there, asking them, "What do you think? Did you see the same thing?" But I feel like if we had to stand witness for it, we all could, which is why I stand by what I originally did in my opening paragraph. There was more than just me. We all experienced this hell as a group. No matter how terrifying it may have been. Oh, and one last thing I need to include. If you do decide to read this story, which I'm not sure if you will, please leave my real name out of this. Thank you. I'm only 1/4 native, Chickasaw to be specific. My grandfather, who the majority of this story is going to be about, married a white Slovakian woman, and he, of course, was full-blooded Chickasaw. He's got all sorts of terrifying tales of a creature that he saw, that he described going from being a man to shape-shifting into this reptile-like thing, or as he called it specifically, the man-dragon, because of how terrifyingly fierce that it looked. It was also extremely violent, but not towards just him, but the tribe itself, and any man that it came across. It was full of bloodlust. He says that the entity, although disguised itself as a man, distinctly still looked different and tried to blend in with the tribe, but everybody knew what it was, and it was always opted out. On several occasions, it had tried to kill several of his grandfather's siblings and other fellow tribe members back in the day, and at one point, they just stopped seeing it altogether, and that was the end of that. It really makes you wonder exactly what it is they experienced and saw. It got to such an extreme, though, that the tribe, at one point or another, had sent about 3 of their top warriors to go after this thing. They returned unsuccessful and were not able to locate it, but that at nighttime, this creature would slowly find its way within the village and often try and attack several of the tribe's members, if not steal the children and attack the women. Really anybody it could. The tribes knew this thing as some sort of reptilian shapeshifter creature, or the shapeshifter dragon, they often referred to it as, in the Chickasaw native tongue. Because I'm only like 1/4 native, I don't know enough about my own culture to really understand the language that much, since it was never spoken to me. Although my grandfather has taught me some of the language, very small amounts though. My parents, and even he, mostly talks to me in English. I'm just glad I never had to see this thing myself. And I guess other tribes in the entire Oklahoma area and northern Texas also have written and verbal stories passed down of the Dragon Man and how it has the ability to take shape and form of people and can shapeshift at will. Knowing the very limited amount of knowledge I do about my own culture and my own people, is it possible that this is some sort of skinwalker? Or maybe something else entirely? I don't know. I mean, my people do have a lot of stories about Bigfoot too, and dogmen, puckwudgies, and several other cryptid-like creatures, even flying ones, and ones that live in the water. My people even had lakes that were marked as not safe because of certain beings that lived in them and dwelt at the bottom of the lake. Is it possible that this Dragon Man surrounded itself in the woods nearby and was just waiting until the right time to strike? Which it probably never got, because my people pursued it endlessly until it just stopped coming around. These are questions I'll probably never have the answer to, and my father doesn't have many answers to them either, or my grandfather, but it's something I look to explore more of, and hopefully come back to you with a lot more terrifying stories.